What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and we are here with another exciting installment of Overthinking MTG, the unscripted, unedited show where I look at a random magic card every single day and talk about it for at least 10 minutes. All right, so let's go ahead and scroll on down. We're on the Gatherer right now. We're going to scroll down to the random card button. I'm going to go ahead and click that view card. Ooh, and today we got a good one. We are looking today at Boomerang. This is actually an incident that I believe came up recently in our conversation about Temporal Adept because that card was mimicking Boomerang. It leveraged a very similar effect. And the one that we're looking at specifically right now is from 7th edition. Now, this was a common back in the day that oftentimes accompanied cards like Unsummon or Counterspell that were just staples in blue control. So let's see, what does it do? Boomerang is an instant for 2 blue. So blue, blue. Instant, return target permanent to its owner's hand. It just return target permanent. Doesn't have to be a non-land permanent, doesn't have to be a creature, doesn't have to be anything specific, just a permanent. Anything that's on the board, you pay 2, it's back up to its owner's hand. So no matter what strategy you're going up against, this card has the potential to really slow your opponent down. Like the impact on their tempo with a card like this is huge because even if they haven't played any permanents, they have lands. At the very least, on your turn 2, you can set their mana base back a turn, and that can be devastating. And like I was saying in the Simic Growth Chamber conversation, if you use that to bounce one of the bounce lands from Ravnica that tap for 2, all of a sudden you're setting them back like 3 turns. So if they're using that strategy, if they're trying to leverage those, you have an opportunity with this card to really mess it up. And that's just beautiful. And then the other thing that's great about bounce spells specifically, now they lack the permanence of a destroy effect. They lack the yeah, at the end of the day, anything you bounce, your opponent can just play it again next turn. So that's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, you can't remove something permanently this way. You're just putting it back into their hand. Now, if they cheated it onto the battlefield in some weird way, then that could be a really big setback. You know, the Titans, like Uro or Kroxa, come to mind because they have to do. You have to play them from your hand and then have them die, go to the graveyard, and then you can escape them in order to actually get them to stick on the battlefield. So you bounce one of those guys with the Boomerang or an Unsummon or your or Temporal Adept for that matter, your bounce of choice, then all of a sudden you're kind of resetting that sequence in a way that's a lot more meaningful than if you were to just bounce a creature that just comes in from the hand in kind of the standard fashion. The other thing that's great about the flip side, so there are two sides to that coin. One, the removal isn't permanent, and that's one of the things that makes bounce effects potentially less valuable than destroy or exile effects. However, the benefit of that is your opponent finds themselves on the next turn with the serious question, do I play what I was going to play on this turn, or do I play the thing I played last turn? And that is a real dilemma and a great decision point to put them in, because if they're trying to curve out and they're trying to be super efficient and hit all the points, see, this is something that is much more impactful in competitive Magic than it is in like casual kitchen table Magic. Because if I'm across the kitchen table from somebody and we just kind of slap something together, or if we're playing in limited to some extent, it's then you have a situation where there's a semi-decent chance I don't have a 3-drop anyway. So if you bounce my 2-drop, okay, that's not a big deal. I was going to basically just play a land and pass the turn. So, all right, I guess I'll play a land and play my 2-drop again. It doesn't really impact me at all. Now, that said, though, if I'm an aggro player and we're playing at a tournament caliber, or even if it's, whether that's a local tournament or a world championship, if we are trying to get every cent of value, every single drop of value that we can get out of every single mana we tap and every single play that we make, something like this that has an opportunity to just set the clock back on everything you've done in a turn is really devastating. I know there was actually a game on Arena that I played many, many months ago now that I still remember fondly, where I was using cards like Exclusion Mage and Unsummon, and one person played the exact same 5-drop Angel for like 4 turns in a row, and I could just feel, even though all they had was a little emote, and they weren't even making any kind of, they weren't emoting at all on Arena during this game, but I could just tell, like as I was doing it, I was realizing, man, if I was my opponent right now, I would be chucking my keyboard across the room because this thing just couldn't stick. And because I kept putting it back into his hand, he just kept replaying it, and it cost 5. And so like it was his turn 5, and he thought he had me, and then I bounced it back up to his hand. Okay, well, turn 6, he threw it back down. Turn 7, that's what it was again. Then turn 8, and I was able to just kind of like noodle away with with a couple weenies, and I ended up winning that game just by stopping him from leveraging his mana curve correctly. And if you can stall somebody out high up on their mana curve like that, whoo, because you end up spending very little mana, and they have to spend a lot to pick up the pace and or stay in the game. So cards like Boomerang are wonderful because they give you an early tempo advantage if there's value there. Because if I'm going up against an aggro player and I know they're going to have some just bomb fire coming down on turn 2 and 3, if I have an opportunity to bounce one of their lands early, you better believe I'm doing that because that slowdown is going to be really meaningful. That said, if I'm going up against another control player, that situation, those individual lands in the early game, probably not so great unless I have a finisher that I really need to drop on turn 3. Because then when I throw something like Boomerang at one of their lands, I'm either going to deny them that resource the following turn, or they're going to counter my Boomerang, in which case I'm denying them that counter spell. So either way, this card is going to eliminate a resource. Yeah, Boomerang rips. This card is amazing. I absolutely love it. I have a handful of them. I don't own one that's this particular art, which is a shame because this art is gorgeous, and we will definitely get into it. But I have a number of the older. I think the ones that I have are from like 4th and 5th edition, where it shows like a demon that looks like it's being kind of like stretched into. Or like being like squished back into Aether. Anyway, but so the one we're looking at right now, this particular Boomerang, this card, it shows the art was by Rebecca Gay, who by the way is fantastic. I know a lot of people. Her art style is very unique compared to a lot of other Magic artists, but she is incredibly prolific. She's all over the game, and there are very few artists who every single time I look at a card, like there are seriously like there are a handful of artists. All magic art is beautiful. Like let's just call it what it is. Like so if you're listening to this and you have illustrated a magic card and I don't mention your name in a second, it's not that you are not a fantastic artist. If you have been selected by Wizards of the Coast to put magic or to bring magic to life, you're doing a phenomenal job. Keep it up. Heck yes. And seriously, if you want to shout out on the show, just shoot me a message in Discord. I would be more than happy to do so. I'd love to look at one of your cards and talk about it. Because seriously, hell, if you want to come on for an interview, I'm game. We're still in the early stages of this show, and I'd love to make it something. Anyway, that is to say, magic artists are great. Rebecca Gay is an artist that you may think the name is pronounced Rebecca Guay, which I did for many, many years because it's Guay, but I've been recently corrected. It is Rebecca Gay, as I understand it. So unless she reaches out and corrects me again, which I wouldn't be surprised. So I'm not sure, but I believe it's Rebecca Gay. That's my understanding. Anyway, so this particular art is showing showing kind of a flock of fairies, a group of fairies, and they are they appear to be lifting a tree folk into the air, almost whisking it away. Very reminiscent. Well, I say reminiscent, but this card came out, a decade before. But it's very similar to Stolen by the Fae from Throne of Eldraine. I'm getting very much that same vibe from this. Except it's a tree folk, this big ass tree folk that they're carrying, and ultimately it looks like they've just kind of swooped down. Everybody's kind of grabbed a handle, or they've like wrapped like ropes around it and just are just hauling it away. And it's fun because if you look closely, so it's this big tree folk, and it seems almost indifferent. Like it doesn't seem to be putting up a huge struggle. It almost, if I had to ascribe a human emotion to its facial features, I would say confused. As if it's like, what, huh? Like I'm getting what fairies? What's happening? I'm what? And then if you look down in the background of the image, there is a small figure in billowing robes and a big pointing hat, or pointy hat rather, and it has like glowing, some kind of orbs around its hands. And so you kind of contextually put it together, and I would say that that is most likely the planeswalker that is has summoned this tree folk into existence to go to battle for it. Meanwhile, the opponent planeswalker has cast Boomerang and summoned a flock of fairies to come just carry this tree folk away. So that's kind of fun. It's an interesting take on it. In a lot of other instances of Boomerang, it's depicted more like almost like counter magic. It's like it's a force that's like pushing the creature back. Oftentimes a creature back to the void and or to the blind eternities or wherever creatures come from in Magic. I got to be honest, I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, so anyway, that's an interesting twist, interesting take on it, which is fun. And the art is actually very similar to the stained glass art that we see on some of the promo planeswalkers these days. So it's lovely. I think it's really cool. And then Rebecca Gay is one of those artists that, as I was saying earlier, there's a handful of artists that when I look at a card and go, man, that is gorgeous, there are a handful of names that if I look down, there's a really good chance I'm going to see them. Just because for whatever reason, their art style just really speaks to me. And Rebecca Gay is one of them. Her artwork is just very eye-catching. It's very unique. I believe it's mostly watercolor, and um, it has a very ethereal quality to it that a lot of other artists aren't able to capture, and I think it's really cool. A handful of other ones. I know I've mentioned John Avon. His landscapes are just absolutely mind-blowing. Seb McKinnon is one of the best. That dude's insane. And as a player who plays a lot of black cards, like black, red, and blue is kind of my wheelhouse. So his artwork shows up on a lot of stuff that I think is really freaking slick. So yeah, it's all great. Anyway, there are a number of others. There are dozens of awesome artists, and like I said, if you are putting your artwork on Magic cards, holy crap, you did it! It's fantastic. I love it. I love what you do. Keep it up, because there are so many beautiful, beautiful pieces of art in this game, and there are so many amazing, beautiful pieces of art that are chilling on commons that are unplayable. That's the thing that I find fascinating. I had that moment when I cracked my first Guilds of Ravnica pack. There was a leapfrog. That card is absolute unplayable trash, and that's coming from the Jankomancer himself. Like, I looked at that card and been like, where would I put this? Where would I ever put this card? It's like a 1/3 for 3, and it can gain flying some of the time. It's like, ugh, it's an awful card. But the artwork is showing a tree frog stuck to the side of a building and it's looking down, and the sense of scale as you're looking down on the city of Ravnica from what looks like half a mile up, with the like looking over this frog's shoulder as it's looking down to the ground, is such a cool, beautiful depth. Like, if you were afraid of heights, that card, like if you were to blow that image up, like that might actually give you like a little palpitation, because it's got that sense of depth and height. And like, I almost felt a little vertigo looking at it. It's just such a beautiful image, and the card is crap. Like, even in draft, like even as draft chaff, it's just not good. So anyway, that is to say, Magic artists, holy crap, you guys rule. That's just one example of one moment that I had. There are thousands of beautiful pieces of art, and we are very fortunate to be playing a game where we get to look at such amazing, beautiful, original pieces. It's so cool. I absolutely love it. I don't think Magic would be what it is today if it wasn't for the artists. So yes, artists everywhere, thank you for what you do. It's wonderful. There's also flavor text on this particular card that we haven't gotten to yet. So we have fairies, they're carrying a tree folk away, and a summoner is very bummed that his tree folk is getting pulled away from him. And it says, "Return from whence ye came. Edmund Spencer, the Fairy Queen." Oh, cool. This was back in the day when they were willing to put literary references on Magic cards as flavor text. They've gotten away from it now, but that's something that they used to do quite a bit, where they would actually take fairy tales, or even Shakespeare. I think there were even some that had biblical verses on them, where they were actual quotes from famous pieces of literature, and they were slotted in as flavor text. You saw it on a lot of core sets, or ones where the plane was kind of ambiguous. That was something that happened quite a bit, or you saw that that was fairly common back in the day, and some of them are actually really cool. Yeah, I actually have a couple copies of Dark Banishing that have Shakespeare quotes on them that I think is pretty darn slick. I dig that, but I know it's not for everybody. Actually, come to think of it, I think one of them was illustrated by Rebecca Kay too. Anyway, I can go on and on about the silly jank in my collection that makes me happy, but well, I'll be back tomorrow to do that. So, all right, thanks so much, guys. This has been fun. Twitch.tv/hamhocks42. You can check me there every weekday morning, Monday through Friday, 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That's when I do my morning workout. We have a lot of fun over there. Also, hit me up on the Discord server. That link is in the description. Thank you so much, and I will catch you next time.